This is a very interesting thing that I want to ask about.
The pandemic was this generation's World War I.
What? Huh?
I know that I've always been paid from taxpayers' money.
95% will have viewed hardcore pornography. By 12.
Not everybody on the internet is looking out for your kid. I know that I've always been paid from taxpayers' money.
We should arm teachers.
I would go to cry.
Do you think that's a good or a bad idea? Why are public school teachers dropping like flies? And what can we do to fix it? And what does the future of education in America look like? Perhaps my guest today, the Assistant Superintendent for District 87 and the former Assistant Regional Superintendent of Schools in McLean, Livingston, Logan, and DeWitt counties, and an ISU Hall of Fame educator, and someone who's been in the field for 30 years, Dr. Diane Wolf, can help us find answers to these questions. Diane, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me be here with you.
Oh, hey, the pleasure is all mine. So before I dive into any questions, let me just ask you, before the show we were talking about some of the other things you do, and maybe you could elaborate on that and tell the audience, what else do you do?
Sure. Well, first off, I would like the audience to know I love being a teacher. And so for me, this was a really important topic that we do talk about. And I have had a wonderful career, all here really in Bloomington Normal, starting with working for Illinois State University and then being a high school teacher and then going on to do professional development for teachers in over 30 school districts. And I have been really lucky to do professional development. That's what we call teaching teachers. That's how my children say, oh, what does your mom do? Oh, she just teaches teachers. I teach teachers and administrators about the joys of teaching. And so I've been able to do that all across the country.
Wow, all across the country to crowds of varying sizes, right? What's the biggest group that you've talked to?
My largest group was about 1,800 teachers. Yeah.
That's an auditorium.
Yeah,
that's
it is.
Incredible.
And it was a great day. So.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so let me just dive right into this. This is a simple sounding question. Perhaps it'll have a complex answer though. What is the role of a teacher, do you believe?
Well, I think the most important role of a teacher is to take what a student needs to know in that grade level, that content area, and throw some spice on it to have a student decide, oh, this is something that I want to learn more about, or I want to take it in this direction. And I really think that a teacher's most important job is to be another caring adult in a child's life. So.
Okay, and so do you believe that trumps education?
I don't know anybody who's ever taught me anything that I didn't want to learn from. And that could be a parent, a grandparent, my neighbor. I just think it's really important that when we think about education, we really do think about that role in that community that's in a classroom. And the teacher's one part of that. But the other part of the classroom are the other kids in the classroom and a student's own where they're at that time. Because I know that when I was teaching, that there were some days a kid was like, yeah, whatever, not interested. And then something would happen outside of school or they would have read something and all of a sudden they're like, whoa, can we talk about that a little bit more? Like, I think that maybe this sounds a little bit more interesting. So I don't know if I could honestly say where something starts or ends, but I do know that when you have that community in a classroom or in a building, it sure makes learning a lot more fun.
Right. And there's so much. People have so many opinions. People outside of the education world have so many opinions about education and teaching. One thing I've always thought is these are some of the most important people that the majority maybe of kids will have in their lives. Everyone has some wildly influential teacher. Usually it's going to be positive too. I mean, not a lot of people say this teacher ruined my life, but an awful lot of people say this teacher really got me on the right track. I can say that for myself. But do you think that teachers are overworked? Is that a fair question to ask? Can you answer that?
I would say it this way. I'm going to take your question in two parts. Okay. Why do people have a lot of opinions about school? Because everybody's gone to school. So wherever their experience was, they think that's the experience for everybody. So I find that even in the time that I've been in education in 30 years, get this one, Paul, when I started, I did not have a computer anywhere in my classroom. I used to take attendance by a piece of paper that I circled kids' names on, put it outside my door. We have changed so much, but people have an opinion about school because I went to school for 12 years or 15 years or 18 years or whatever they went. And so I think it's really hard to really know. I have found in my experience, if somebody has children in school, if they have somebody that comes home to them every day, they're incredibly supportive of schools. It tends to be the people that haven't been in a school for a while, that the only information that they get on a regular basis are really bad movies that just, put teachers as either saviors that can change a kid's whole life just by showing up to work, or they put them in a light that they're just awful and they have their feet up on the desk. I will tell you, I don't know teachers that are like that every day. I've never known that. So I think people have opinions because they've been there and they don't realize how much it has changed. Mm-hmm. The second part of your question, are teachers overworked? I would say this. I think teaching is a really hard job. It is a very difficult job, and it is a very difficult job for a very different reason than most people think. It's not so much the kids' behaviors or the parents being supportive or not. If you think about it, you prepared today for my interview. You did research. You're going to be working with me. What if I told you that the minute I walked out that door, somebody else came in 4 minutes later, and you had to go teach and do a totally different interview?
You know what's hilarious is I am,
but okay, so that
rarely happens, and it's only two people. So.
Right. So one of the things is that the profession of teaching is actually presenting new material every single hour of every day. And a lot of people don't think about that. They think that a teacher just gets up. Hey, this is great. I'm going to tell the kids a few things, have them do a little bit of work. And elementary teachers, though, our elementary teachers, not only do they teach, an hour after an hour and after an hour, they teach 6 different subjects every day, 180 days out of the year. Yes, teachers do get prep time. This is true. It varies from district. I've been in districts that I've worked with that a teacher gets an hour and a half a week. Think about that, an hour and a half a week to prep for an entire week of work.
What is that prep time? What does that mean?
Sure. So what that means would be a time that a teacher does not have students in their classroom. This is when they're getting ready for their lessons coming up. They're looking at the assessments to see if the kids are learning during that time. So when I'm asked, are teachers overworked? I think the job of teaching has changed incredible just with the introduction of technology. Yes, it does make our lives more efficient, but it also has been another layer. And there's another thing. Kids are coming into us now with more background knowledge because they are in front of a computer. They're watching TV more often. They are exposed to more. So one of the things that has done is that makes a teacher have to always be thinking about the next steps, because you might have a kid that already knows what you're going to teach. What are you going to do to get them to still expand their learning? So there's my answer.
How do you think technology has made it more difficult or challenging?
I think one of the things that technology has done is it's made us more efficient and less efficient all at the same time. And I think one of the ways that technology has really impacted is the amount of information that a teacher now has access to present. So when I started teaching, I got a textbook, that one book. That was it. That's what my students knew about American literature, whatever was in that book. Well, now, if a student would come home and say to a parent, teacher gave me one book, that's it, that's all we're going to do, and we're going to start on page 1 too, Mom, and we're going to finish on page 300. That's not how we learn anymore. You know, a student right now, if they have their phone in their hand, has access to millions of different things. So the role of teaching has changed from us being I have the information that I'm going to bestow upon you, the teacher, to a facilitator, this is a topic we are going to talk about, the solar system. Let's just take something everybody understands, the solar system. And now we're going to look at it because what is up on NASA information about the solar system might be different than what's in the Smithsonian Institute as a source, and on it goes. Plus the kid that just goes, hey, teacher, I Googled it, and you know what? There's more planets, there's less planets, there's different names. All of that is a very different level of learning than probably even when you were in school.
Oh, no, for sure. First of all, we definitely couldn't have phones in class,
Right.
but it seems like kids can have phones in class
Yeah.
right now. That's crazy. Maybe
I
it's not
know.
crazy. Maybe am I getting old? Is this what it feels like when things are changing?
Right.
It's uncomfortable. But so what's that like then for a teacher? Are teachers getting corrected a lot because what they learned was older, about the planets, for instance? Maybe they're
No,
still incorporating
yeah.
Pluto, and the kid's like, that's actually
Yeah,
wrong. I
like-
just looked it up.
Right. No, you know what? That's how the role of the teacher has changed, is that we are a learner in the classroom too. And so the whole feel of a classroom now is much more collaborative. That I don't know a teacher that I know right now that would get up in front of a classroom and say, I'm the teacher, period. Whereas, like back in my parents' day, that's how it was. And so I think that's a big change for people, is to understand that, what, we respect the student as a learner, even if it's on something that we don't know about. Those are actually the types of classes that most of us really like to teach. Teaching a student how to say, politely, because that's part of school too. Hey, did you ever think that maybe we could do it this way? And I just had a fifth grader in our summer programming. I stopped by and I was like, what are you doing? And he was doing something on their device. And let me show you. Taught me something. I was like, oh my goodness, this would have saved me like 10 hours if I would have known this. And I was able to say to him, wow, that was really, really good thinking. Teachers now are about thinking, being a critical thought partner of, is this true? Is it not true? Because, we have to make sure that students have those skills on determining for themselves, even starting as young as kindergarten. That we want students to know that just because somebody says something, you have to ask questions to make sure that where that was coming, what was going on with that. Like,
Right.
How do you know that? My nephew is going to be in kindergarten, and I love hearing him talk to his friends, because I'll hear him say, well, how did you know that? Well, I didn't know that. That's really interesting. And then, they go and do other things.
It sounds like there's this beautiful aura of curiosity on behalf of the students and the teacher. It's like, we're going to learn this together.
Right.
We're going to explore more, rather than the days of old when someone would say, here's what I know in my brain, and they just spit it at you. In this, you're learning together. You're exploring. You're encouraging question asking. I think it sounds beautiful, but I'm sure there's holes in this, and teachers have different styles and what have you. But the tractor cab is the mission control of the entire farming operation. Worn out and outdated tractor cabs lead to annoying discomfort, hindered productivity, dangerous sound levels, and lower resale value. This is why you need to revive your tractor cab with Fair Cab Interiors. Today, we use our vast facility in the cornfields of Illinois to manufacture high-quality custom tractor upholstery for over 750 models from the 1960s all the way through to the 2010s. Our team of product engineers carefully design each new part, emphasizing product fit and ease of installation for anyone to install. We offer acoustical foam panels, ProForm plastic panels, headliners, floor mats, door and window seals, seats, and much more. We carefully monitor lamination quality, use premium grade foam, and utilize the highest standards of raw materials when manufacturing. With our massive inventory and delivery trucks that pick up daily, logistics are a snap. Our call center is manned not by robot answering machines, but real, experienced, and knowledgeable people who will provide you with installation tips, product details, and help with any questions you may have before or after the sale. But don't just take our word for all this. See what people are saying on faircab.com and Google Reviews, where we've earned over 2,000 5-star reviews.
When the time comes to fix up your aging tractor interior, try out the cab interior experts at Fair Cab. Visit us at faircab.com or give us a call at 815-692-3355.
In my professional life, I have to deal with a lot of different personalities. Some people are more introverted, some are more extroverted, some are just spout out because they want to spout out. I think that that's the exciting thing about what I've seen in classrooms across 4 counties, is that it's the part that other people don't get to see, because we don't just let, people off the street come and walk through our schools. But I wish that I could, because I think some of the criticisms about schools has to go to this foundation of what is the role of the teacher. And if you're in a box that you think the role of the teacher is to be a school marm, that what that means is, you do it my way. There's only one way to do it. That's the way. And if you don't do it that way, 1, you haven't learned, and 2, you're disrespectful. There is a fine balance that each teacher has to get to in their own classroom about what my expectations are and how I need you to show that so that we have good communication. And then what a student might be able, some kids, for example, might do better doing a podcast than a 5-page written a report. Well, if the outcome was to interview a guest and to report out about what that guest had to say about their topic, what's it matter if it's a podcast or a paper or maybe a video? And so I think that's the kind of stuff that for me is really exciting about being a teacher and being a student.
That's very, very interesting. That's encouraging to hear, honestly. It's a bit inspiring. I really like that style of teaching and the style of learning. Speaking of, though, politely questioning authority from students to teachers, I've spoken with a lot of teachers, granted from rural areas more so, who talk about being in an interesting position where they can't say certain things to their students. This is an issue that's very popular on the conservative end of the spectrum, and they say that they need to affirm kids and their pronouns, or whatever they're really saying about themselves. They need to go along with it. They can't they can't offer their opinions, and this is what the conservative teachers, maybe they're more liberal, I really don't know, but they're saying they can't tell their opinion quite as much as they would like. And particularly, I'd like to ask you about the pronouns and what have you. Do you think it's within the teacher's rights to say, I don't know if I'm going to call you that?
And this is my opinion. I have been around a lot of school districts. I have yet found one, and it's just my own life, that has put out you can or can't. So I can't really speak to that. What I can say to you, though, is this, is that remember at the beginning I was talking about that community in your school or in your classroom. I always think that you have to have that relationship with your students. And so I could see it too. I don't really know about that one because I've never been in the part of telling teachers they have to do anything like that. So,
right. Well, one of your jobs, correct me if I'm wrong, is to read the legislation that gets passed at the state level and communicate that to teachers, talk about how they implement that and what that might look like, some challenges, et cetera, et cetera. Are there any laws that you think exist in Illinois that maybe you would like to see not be laws, that maybe go too far, or maybe laws that should be in place?
Do you know what? That definitely is a huge part of my job, my former job. I always said I took legislation, what was out there, and then I put it into some type of manageable language so that people could actually practice. I will tell you this. One of the things I know is that legislation is always introduced. It's rarely approved. So a lot of times what will happen is that there will be a big fervor about, this said this said that, but it hasn't even been passed. Or if it has been passed, it's a 3 to 5 year implementation process. So I, in my role, have to wait until the authoritative source, which in Illinois is the Illinois State Board of Education, they take that law, they put it into, okay, this is what you have to do in your school. And then it gets to me and I go and I say, okay, these are the things that you need to look at. And these are some different ways for you to do that. The one thing I think that people don't realize is that we have federal legislation. That's overarching. Don't get a vote on it. This is just the way it is.
Like no corporal punishment.
Yeah, like if it was that, like that, or if it was that you need to educate students that have individual education plans, special education students. You would want, that's a federal law, right? And then that goes to the State Board of Education, and they say, okay, here's our federal law. This is how we're going to do it in Illinois. And then that goes to the 859 school districts in the state of Illinois. One of my school districts in this region had 46 students in the entire district, K-8. Whereas the Chicago public schools, who are run by those same laws, have, probably 2.1 million students.
In a district?
In a district.
Wow.
Chicago public school, everybody who's in. So I say that because it's much more complicated, and that's why you have a locally elected school board. Every school district, all 859, have 7 people from the community that were brave enough and volunteers their time to say, you know what, I want to be the locally voice to be able to say, yes, this will work for our community, or no, not so much.
Okay, this is a very interesting thing that I want to ask about then. So school boards, I've filmed school board meetings, and they've been, popular. People care about these, although not a lot of parents show up to them. How do I say this? Okay, say there's a masking law or just a law passed in Illinois saying that schools need to do this. Well, a lot of parents are going to come and say, don't do it. What happens? Does the school board say they can or cannot do it? Is it up to the school board to make the decision? And if they decide we're not going to do this thing that the state says we need to do, what happens? Do they go to jail? Do they not get state funding? How much funding do they get in the first place, maybe?
Sure. Lots to unpack there.
Right.
Let's start with the roles and responsibility of a school board.
Dave's Supermarket in Fairbury is my favorite grocery store, not just in central Illinois, but in the world. And for good reason. They have the most incredible customer service, friendly carry-out workers, an exquisite and affordable bakery where fresh-baked goods are prepared daily, and a deli market that is truly top-notch, that provides plenty of seating, delicious food, and even free coffee, if you can believe that. And their canned meats are out of this world. This is all just the tip of the iceberg, though, so if you haven't been here, you are really missing out. Come check out Dave's Supermarket in Fairbury, Illinois, where they've been wowing the customer for 72 years.
The roles and responsibilities of a school board is to, 1, uphold the board policies that they voted on and legislation. The thing is that there are some laws that come through that there's a lot of leeway. That you have. Let me think of one off the top of my head. A law right now would be that students need to have a world history class. Okay, that's a good one. American history class. Okay, that's a graduation requirement. Every high school has to offer that. What goes into that class is what a district will decide what goes into that class, because it's not mandated you have to teach exactly this or exactly that. There's some of that, but you got a lot of leeway still. And so that would be a locally controlled decision. But A non-locally controlled decision would be that that same teacher that's teaching American history has to have teaching credentials through the State Board of Education. The board can't go and say, you know what, we don't want that. We only want, this. So there's a little bit of difference, and that's why it's so important that before we do anything, we wait for the legislation to pass, ISB to come out with the guidelines. It goes through their legal process. It's called JCAR. I'm getting way too boring there. And then that gives us guidance on where do we have flexibility and where do we not.
Why aren't teachers recommending their family members or some students that they enter into this profession as much as maybe they once were? What gives?
Well, I can tell you from my personal experience that my daughter's going into education. So for me, I've heard of these stories, but I have not seen them because I know that Illinois State University is the number one teacher educators, and they're seeing their numbers dip a little bit, but so are their numbers in other colleges right now. So do we have people that are leaving the profession or not encouraging people? Yes, but I've been in major corporations that I've heard them say to their own kids, don't go work for fill in the blank, an insurance company, a car dealership, something like that. So I think one of the things that we really need to focus on is that teachers always have been held to a higher standard. There's just no doubt about that. Right or wrong, I know that I've always been paid from taxpayers' money. I take that really seriously. People work really hard for their money, and police, fire, teachers get paid through taxpayers' money. So everybody feels like they have a voice in what we do. Like, I've had people call me and say, well, I'm your boss. I'm like, then I want to raise, like that kind of stuff. But, so everybody feels like they have that right to be able to say. But I do ask this when people ask me about why are so many people leaving education? Right now, have you not walked around our community and there is not a business that you can go into that doesn't have what on the front door? Now hiring. Please be patient with us because we are low staffed. I was in a major city just over the weekend, and the mall doesn't open until 2 hours later because they can't. So I'm not sure it's just education. I really think that as a society right now, after a global pandemic, we're seeing people like yourself say, what do I want to do with my everyday? And with so many more jobs being at home, people got very comfortable working in their home, wearing their yoga pants, not having to have colleagues to compete with or, all of that. But I know that in the school districts in this region that I have worked with, we still are filling positions. Are there as many? No. But in Illinois, that can be traced back to 12 years ago with some legislative changes that really hurt us.
Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah. Well, one of them was that they wanted to do grade bands for elementary so that somebody would be just able to teach kindergarten, first and second grade. Sounds great on paper. Wow, you could really focus on those early learning skills. The problem with that is in this area, we have rural school districts that you might have one grade that's really large, and you have to move teachers with that class as they go through the elementary school years because the class behind them was not as big. And so I think that really hurt. The other thing is when you're 18 years old and you're going into teaching and somebody says to you, what do you want to do when you grow up? Well, I only want to be a second grade teacher. Well, they don't even have the enough experience to know, am I more comfortable? And why would we put somebody in a 35-year career with only being able to be in a small grade band like that? So that was one of the things that I think. The other thing that happened was they changed the retirement system. And so now, like for me, I can retire after 35 years of service. If I was a little bit younger, I would have to work until I was 67. So thinking about being 67 as a kindergarten teacher is a lot different than maybe, retiring at 55 or, I just feel like there's a lot of criticism about people leaving education and like, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. But in reality, we've seen that across the entire country, people changing their career paths.
Now, am I seeing this wrong, or is this truly the case? It seems like in the past few years, there's been something like a parent revolt in a way. They're showing up at these board meetings. They're angry about things. Largely, I have to assume it has to do with the pandemic and being at home and watching their kids in class on their computer. Is the teacher revolt, has that been a point of pain for a lot of teachers? Is it even a thing, or is it the news maybe making it look worse than it is?
What we are experiencing is what everybody's experiences have been after the pandemic. Tough. It's hard. And one of the things that I know is that the loud ones get the press. But I will say this, is that I have rarely been treated with such disrespect that made me think I needed to leave the profession. I deal with angry people. I've been dealing with angry people for a long time. You just have to get to what they're really angry about and furthermore, why. And so if they are getting their information from sources that maybe are not credible or that I didn't understand or something like that, that gets kind of tough. But I will tell you this, we have a lot more people that are supportive of public and private education than we have the naysayers. And I think it's kind of like whenever a restaurant opens, okay, brand new restaurant, in Bloomington Normal, we like our new restaurants, right?
Oh, yeah.
For this first 6 weeks, there's a line out, and then people start getting angry because they didn't get what they expected or their food came out a little bit cold. And with social media now, you can put that out. No accountability. I don't have to talk to anybody. I don't have to have call up the manager like you used to have to and say, my food was cold. I can just put it right out there. And then somebody else who's never even been to the restaurant can say, oh yeah, I don't like cold food too. And there is when you get those spirals. So do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand completely, yes.
So for me, have there been people that have been upset across the country? Yes, I've read them just like everybody else. I'm not going to sit here and say no. We just got done with a major, major disruption to our economy, to our living arrangements, to our health and how we felt about our health. And really, we're called for the first time since I've been alive as a country that we had to come together. Well, it is unrealistic to think that everybody was going to be happy with that because everybody had a different experience going through it. So for me, I just kind of see this as no different. And I will tell you personally, I've been reached out more in a positive way than I have in a negative way. I've gotten more personal things like, hey, Dr. Wolf, thanks for you do. Our teachers have been outstanding. I mean, and I will say that collectively because their world was disrupted very quickly. And I saw it coming. If you think about the first 9 weeks of the pandemic, go back and look at social media. Teachers are superheroes. They should be paid more. I could never do this job. And then people got tired like everything else. And so the tide changed. But I'm so excited for this school year because we're going to be back to what we kind of know is normal. And I think that everybody, parents, kids, the real heroes of the pandemic were the kids. They got not enough press because they had to switch on a dime. They lost their friends. They lost their routine. And we don't hear about them.
I had a child counselor actually on the show not too long ago, and she said after the pandemic, she's flooded. She has so many kids, the psychological distress that all that caused, and of course it would. We ripped the foundation of their lives out from under them. They go to school, they're with friends, they're used to this. This is consistent, and it's just like, well, all that consistency.
Yeah.
See ya.
Exactly.
Fairbury Furniture is Central Illinois' premier furniture store. This family-owned business offers a vast selection of premium furniture items from all of your favorite brands, including Sealy, Best Home Furnishings, Leather Italia, Tempur-Pedic, and Ashley, just to name a few. And right next door to their gorgeous 7,000 square foot furniture showroom, you will find the Fairbury Furniture Mattress Store, home to all of the latest and greatest mattresses in any and all sizes. Also inside Fairbury Furniture is the popular WC Market, a beloved shop that offers an ever-changing selection of unique gifts and fashionable home decor. So make your home interior beautiful, comfortable, stylish, and delightful when you shop at Fairbury's own Fairbury Furniture.
Come on down to Fairbury Furniture, where the furniture rocks.
And I think that that's going to be something that we're going to be dealing with. This is, the pandemic was this generation's World War I, World War II, Vietnam War, civil rights movements, all of that. That's what this generation of students had over the last 2.5 years. And their teachers helped their parents guide them through that.
Do you think teachers, simple question here, sort of, do you think teachers are more stressed out now than they have been in the last 50 years?
I don't know. I think stress is very individual. So I don't know about you, but I can be stressed at 10 and fine by 11. You know?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
So I don't know that. I know that there's been a lot more predictions on teachers being stressed out. But I will tell you, I was with teachers this morning before coming here, and there were 7 of them. And I asked this question: how are you all feeling about the upcoming school year? Oh my gosh, can't wait to get back into my classroom. They were a little stressed out that Walmart had out school supply lists before July 1. But other than that, they were in working, brainstorming about how to make their school year awesome.
And now, one of your big things you do is you teach teachers, right? You coach them on how to connect with kids, maybe, and you've spoken about the importance of having healthy relationships with your students. How do you, and maybe coaches and teachers and parents, anyone can learn from this, but how do teachers effectively, meaningfully connect with their students? This is a bit of a switch here, but I'd love to know that.
Well, the number one thing is that we need to be really, really clear on the role of a teacher in a student's life. 5 hours a day, 180 days. So what that means, and I've talked about this many times ad nauseum, parents and the people in that child's immediate circle that they go home to are their number one influencers, always. Always has been, always will be. So to make a meaningful relationship with a student, the very first thing is that you have to realize that as a teacher, you're being inserted into a student's life for a very specific purpose. If I'm a 3rd grade teacher, it's to teach them 3rd grade curriculum, okay? Because if I don't do it, who's going to do it? Nobody. So you start very early on in your relationship with the students about that, is that my role in your life is to have you start here in August, and together we're going to get you so that you grow your mind and your thoughts, and you get to be able to experience new things by the end of May. I think the other part is I think that home to school relationship is really important. And I just think that is as simple as making sure that the parents know when you're available and how you will communicate with them. And it should be 2 ways. And sometimes that can be challenging for parents to understand that I don't expect teachers to respond to emails at 7 o'clock on a Saturday night. It's going to wait until Monday. But you have to be clear about that, because email, texting, skyward, all of those things have made those boundaries really, really gray sometimes. And I think the other thing that you do with your students to really get a good, solid, meaningful relationship with them is you make sure that they know how you're going to assess them on their learning and make sure it's fair to them. And that's what I talk about the most, is that making sure that students know that how you're going to, what are you using to say if they're learning or not? And if they're not, what are you going to do to support them?
Mm-hmm. And have you heard, I'm sure you have, about in California, like their new grading scales and things where the D's and the F's are no longer a thing. If it's a sub C grade that someone receives, rather than give them a D or a failing grade, they have opted to say you can just retake this and until you get a good grade, I guess, or you can have an extension on when this is due. What do you think of that? I don't know if it's here to stay. It might be one of those, maybe I'm reading something misleading, but it was a big story about 6 months ago or so.
Yeah, that's one that has come and gone through my career.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And this is what I would say. During the pandemic, and I'm going back to that because a lot of people started to learn how to make sourdough bread. Right? Like that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was like a thing. Like, you learn. People started cooking, or they started knitting, or they started. They took up a hobby, right? Well, if I went and the very first time that maybe you knitted yourself a new sweater, Paul, I looked at it and I was like, that's not so great. And then you said, oh, yeah, I did this wrong stitch. And I said, you fail. See ya. Would you ever pick up knitting again? No. So this idea, and I've heard it like, oh, we're getting rid of D's and F's. Well, I have yet in my life had somebody look at me and say, you know what, Diane, you really stink at doing that. Go and spend time to be better. And I'm like, all right, sure, I'll go do that. If we want kids to learn, there is no grade. A, F, your podcasts, nobody goes to you and says, okay, like when I walk out this door, you're not going to give me a multiple choice test. The first thing was Paul friendly? Yes, no, sometimes. Was Paul prepared? Yes, no, sometimes. What, you're not going to do that, right?
Right.
So if, let's say, you flubbed up a word, and what if I would say to you, you can't redo it. That's got to go live. Sorry. That's just the way it is. F. Except you did do it, so that's a D. So I think for me, if we took a lot less emphasis on labeling learning, we would be so much better off. And I'm not saying get rid of grades because it's like the scale at home. I don't like it, but it does give me a barometer about how I'm doing. I think that grades can do that for kids too. But I also think that telling a student time and time again that they're failing is never going to motivate anybody to be a better learner.
What about this, though? Because when I hear that, I get a little concerned because I think I'm very glad no one told me when I would struggle in school, like, hey, man, you're just, you have it rough. Here, we'll make it easy for you. What do you think about raising standards or not moving standards, keeping standards here and encouraging someone saying, you can do it. You're capable. I know it's really tough for you, but you can absolutely do it versus, and then that would incorporate, maybe there's a failing grade and that hurts and that stings, but hey, you're smart. You know you're smart. I know you're smart. I know you're capable. And encouraging them to strive to do the difficult thing rather than bring the bar down.
Well, I didn't hear that you said to bring the bar down. I think that I agree with that. I think
removing that sting of the failing grades, maybe.
Well, I understand, but okay, so you haven't. I give you an F. Then what?
And then I'm like, dang it! But then maybe you say, hey, you can do better. you want some extra help, but then you're a teacher. I can't expect you to do everything. You can't. Maybe
No.
you can't help me or something.
Well,
But-
no, and I think that's the part of that retake that you talked about earlier that is so important. Yeah, this is where you are right now. This is where you are. You've got a 53%. But you know what? If you go and you look and see what you did, you got off on your counting, or I'm not sure you understood these directions, or yeah, we want to do that. I mean, obviously we want to do that. That's what that retake part is. But what if I gave you that F and then I said to you, okay, on to the next thing.
Oh yeah, and I was just left with the failing
And then
grade.
you're
My
just left in-
permanent grade is way down now.
Yeah, I mean, that to me, we don't do that anywhere. Not even the DMV. You go to the DMV and you don't do well on your driving test, they don't say to you, you can never have a driver's license ever. What do
a good
they
point.
say? They say to you, you know what? Your left turns aren't so great. That's what brought you down. Why don't you practice that, come back, and then we'll see how you do. And you do that, and you do that. I have, even on your income taxes, even on a federal law, you make a mistake, they're going to tell you, hey, you made a mistake and you now owe $10,000. And they're going to make you pay that, but they're not going to make you pay it and then go to jail, or say that, we're going to take $10,000 off for the next 10 years because you made that one mistake. And so I think it's really important to keep it in a box of what's the purpose of school? The purpose of school is learning. How do we learn? Failure, success, failure, success. And if we continually only stay in that failure rate and never give a kid a chance to succeed or get something later, because I've never had two students get the material the exact same way on the exact same day. It's almost next to impossible.
Right. And I've heard these Stanford business people say it's a theme. It's if you want success, it's fail fast. No, it's fail quickly and fail often, basically. They encourage failure. You need failure because that's exactly how you learn. But if you're like, if I fail once, I'm screwed.
Right.
I could see the point you're making. Absolutely. I understand.
Yeah, that I fail all the time. I mean,
Me too.
Yeah, I mean, I never write something and really like, whoop, that's it, that's gone, or do a speech and I never practice it or anything like that. I think the hard thing is that the real question that I wish people were asking was, if a student is struggling, what can the teacher or the school do to help them? And what supports does the family need to give at home to help us do our job so that that student can learn? And there's one more thing. Everything we teach a kid does not need to know. That's just the fact of the matter. Our job is to give a wide breadth of experiences. And they're kids, it's why not every kid goes to the same college, community college. Not everybody has the same job. We teach individuals. And those individuals have different backgrounds and different experiences, different wants, different dreams. So our job is to give this smorgasbord of life. And if we're constantly failing a kid that doesn't like chunky peanut butter or math, high-level math, wow, wouldn't that be sad? Because that kid who might not like high-level math might be your most gifted speaker you have in your classroom.
Well, tell me about discipline, though. So you see this all the time in school, and you talk about the healthy relationships that teachers need to have with their students and how big of an impact they can have on their lives. I've seen it.
Yeah.
Again, I told you I'm thankful for some teachers that have had an amazing impact on my life. Sometimes kids are extremely hard to handle. And I'd like to ask you, I don't know if you can say this, but have you ever had a story of, I don't know what to call it, taming is not the right word, where you connected successfully with a hard-to-handle student? Because you did teach for a while, teach in the classic sense, not teach teachers, but teach students.
Yeah.
Did you ever have a time where you connected successfully with a kid that was hard to handle? And, well, we'll start with that, just one question at a time.
Okay, well, I'm smiling because I've been in so this was in 1992. I always taught kids that were struggling in school. Those are the kids. I oversaw the regional alternative school. I've always really gone to kids that maybe traditionally struggled. And I had a freshman. He was 6'2", probably about 160 pounds. He had been written off. He was in foster care. He had changed case managers. Probably at that time, without exaggerating, was on his 6th or 7th one. His entire family was in jail. He was struggling with reading. He read at a 3rd grade level. And he was a handful. And I loved him. I just absolutely loved him because here was the thing. He was hilarious. He was so caring. And so at that point, I had him for his whole freshman year. And I went in and we got along great. And he grew a little bit in his reading ability. Not a lot. I'm not going to sit here and say that all of a sudden I took him from a 3rd grade reading level to 9th grade. That would be a lie. He gained a year's growth. So now let's say he's up to 4th grade. Fast forward, I had him his sophomore year. I had him his junior year. Junior year, he gets arrested. And he comes to me and he says, I'm going to jail. And I was like, okay, then I guess I'm going to tutor you in jail. He just turned 40. We have kept in contact for all of these years. And 3 years ago, I'm sitting at home and I get a Facebook message, and all it is his I would go to cry. It's his picture with a plaque from his employer that was Employee of the Year. He got a $10,000 bonus. And he said to me, I just kept thinking about all the times you made me redo work. So here's the thing. Discipline is hard. And the number one thing we need right now in schools is parents to talk to the other adults before they listen to their kids. My daughters are older now, and when my oldest was in 2nd grade, I'll never forget the parent-teacher conference. This teacher was so gifted. And I'm sitting there as a parent, and I'm a fellow educator, and she says, parents, I'm going to make you a deal. I am going to ask you not to believe everything your kid tells you about what's going on in my classroom. And I will promise you, I won't believe everything they're telling me is happening in your home. And it was so powerful for me because kids don't always know everything. They're children. And so the number one thing that we find with discipline is that if you have a question as a parent about what's going on, if your kid comes home and says, is bullying me, or this teacher said this to me, or this teacher said that to me, pick up the phone and say, my daughter, son came home, said that this happened. Could you talk me through it? Because there might be something going on in that classroom that the teacher didn't see. But most likely, sometimes, it's that, oh my goodness, when I told him that what I really meant was that. And I think that we've got to be very clear about something. Even in families, there's miscommunication. You live together all the time. You have constant you love each other first and foremost, and you know you're stuck with each other forever. Mm-hmm. And there's miscommunication and conflict. And it has to be worked out. In a school setting, it's the exact same thing. We're not perfect. Teachers aren't perfect. Kids aren't perfect. We're not asking anybody to do that. But what we are asking is to remember that when there are discipline issues, that talking it through, the adult that was in the classroom, the adult that is at home, and the kid, that is when you really see growth. And most of the time when I've seen that happen, the kid comes out with the teacher as a much more meaningful relationship than what they went in with.
Mm-hmm. I can't get over how talented of a speaker you are, to be honest. That was beautifully put. You included a touching story and all that. That was very well articulated. And you spoke about parents maybe calling other parents before believing what their kid is saying. That bears repeating. I'm going to make a clip out of that one right there. But I just heard a story the other day about this public pool, that I won't name names or anything, but like there's a public pool. This mom heard that her daughter was being bullied, of course, from her daughter. Yeah. And she got involved right away. She came to the pool and started yelling at these kids, right? Just heard what the daughter was saying. And they tried to stop her, saying, maybe don't go yell at a bunch of kids in public. She did. And the kids started telling her, you got it all wrong. And then they started saying, she's actually the one that's doing this. And this mom was like, what? Huh? You're the problem to her own daughter. And then, the parents are going to be getting involved pretty soon. Maybe before you just think your kid is perfect and is relaying information perfectly, talk to other parents. I liked that. Even before you call angrily the teacher.
Yeah. Well, and I would even say I would go right to the teacher before I would talk to another parent. And here's
really? Okay.
I would. And here's the other thing, Paul, is that I think sometimes parents feel like they have to do something. Always. I had this too, like, oh, my daughters are telling me something. I have to do something with this information. And I have seen some really great parenting occur when the kid comes home, is talking, and says to the kid, what would you like me to do? Would you like me just to listen and just hear what you have to say? Do you want me to call your teacher? Or do you want me to help you figure out how you can manage this? Because the number one thing as a society that we need to do is support kids by giving them really, really safe places that they can just figure out. I don't even know why this is bugging me. But if you think that you're always going to go to mom or dad or grandma or auntie and say, this person was bullying me, and then they go from 0 to 100 and they're yelling at kids at a pool, what's going to happen the next time? They're not going to come to you. And that's what scares me about that. The other thing is, in that situation, maybe that mom was having a really bad day. It happens. We're human. We're all human. And so it sounds like in that situation, I hope that they got resolved.
It's so interesting talking on this show to people that are much more conservative and people that are much more liberal. It's very fascinating because on the conservative end, they're like, don't change. It's conservative, keep it the same. Don't change stuff. Come on, you're radically changing. The reason they're like that is because you risk losing fundamental, important things that have led to success over a long period of time if you just get carried away with changing things. But then if you're not liberal enough and progressive enough, hence the word progressive, things don't improve. And you have to be willing to, go out on a limb and change things and jump into the unknown for the well-being of society and children and et cetera, et cetera. And it's like you have to find a balance. And I just can't get over that. While I listen to you, I'm like, that's a great point. And then I think back to other things that other people have said. I'm like, well, that's a great point too. And maybe they're not mutually exclusive. And anyway, I just wanted to say that. I think it's very, very fascinating in all this. And
well, the one thing that I have learned in my life and in my career, and I think that most people who know me know that this is how I lead, I don't think there's ever one right or wrong answer. I think that's a ridiculous way to think that there's this side or that side. I live life on a continuum. And if we start saying all or nothing, somebody always loses. And so to me, the thing that is most important for people to understand is that there is continuums in there, and that there is not a teacher that wakes up in the morning. This I can guarantee you. I don't know a teacher that gets up. They're driving through Starbucks. They're getting their latte. And then they go, boy, today I'm going to screw up a kid. Today is my day that I want to screw up a kid. We don't do that. And number one thing, I can't say this enough. The number one teacher for a child are their parents, period. Who they are around the most. If it's not the parents, it's the grandparents. It's whoever they lay their head with. Those are the most influential, as they should be, the most influential adults. So let's make sure that we are giving kids the best we possibly can at school and at home.
I agree with you enthusiastically.
Yeah.
I am a big proponent of let's have a cultural push to be really good parents at home. Support your kids. Give them a safe
And let
environment.
us know how we can help you. Hey, listen, school's changed since you were in school. You might not even know how to use a computer. Your kindergartner has access to a world you might not know how to navigate. But guess what? We can show you, and we can teach you, and we can be patient with you, because that's what our vocation is. When we went to be a teacher, I went to help people. Most teachers, if you ask them, why did you become a teacher? It's going to be one of three answers. One, I love school. 2, I wanted to make a difference. 3, I had a teacher who significantly changed my life and I wanted to give back. Very few teachers will have a parent call them and say, I don't know how to do this. And they're like, yeah, well, too bad, so sad. Don't know what to tell you. It is our job. It is what we have chosen to do with our life, to be able to say, I can teach you that. But I can understand how parents, I have 20-year-olds now. They use their phone. They can whip around an Excel worksheet like there's nobody's business. They can use their phone to do things that I'm like, what? I have the same phone. Does my phone do that? I don't have the knowledge. And sometimes it's discerning, especially when they're in high school. And I'm like, back in the day, Paul, maybe not even for you, but so your friends would have to call your house and talk to your mom or dad and then get to talk to you. Yeah. And when it was time for bed, your dad or your mom would get on the phone and be like, time for bed. And they would stay on the phone until you got off. Well, parents have lost a lot of that control. So I get asked a lot about, technology with kids. The best advice I can give parents is you're the parent. I know they want to sleep with their phone. I totally get it. That phone should not be in their bedroom. TV, not in their bedroom. iPad, not in their bedroom, because you lose that feeling of control, and not everybody on the internet is looking out for your kid.
Darn right about that. I've talked about it many times on the show. Actually, just a subsect of that whole topic is the average kid, and it keeps going down. In America, on average, children, by the age of, it's actually 12 now, 95% will have viewed hardcore pornography. By 12. I remember when it was 14 when I was in high school. Now it's 12.
Yeah. And
That's
think
astonishing.
about bringing that into the classroom and not knowing how to handle that. And this is why one of the things that how schools have changed is one of the roles. And this is very challenging for teachers, because when you walk in the classroom, what you might believe in your own home doesn't matter anymore. You're there. You have to teach the kids in front of you. And they shouldn't know where you land on topics. That's something that we believe very forcefully.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, I know people want to say different things
Yes, they
about
do.
that.
Yes, they
of
do.
Of course they did. But I'll never forget when, whenever there was an election, of course, every kid would be like, all right, so who are you voting for?
Yeah.
Who are you voting for? And I would always be like, well, who do you think I'm voting for? And if I was doing my job well, it was 50-50 in the class, because they don't need to know who I vote for or against, or if I vote or whatever. And I just think that those are things that are really important, because public school is for everyone, and we need to make sure that everybody feels welcome there. Doesn't matter where they are on that continuum. To me, it only matters that when they come into our buildings and into classrooms, that they feel like we're glad that they are there, that we respect, that we know our part of their life, which is at a high school 50 minutes a day for 18 weeks. For a first grade teacher, it's 6 hours a day for 180 days. But that's what I get to give you.
Just out of curiosity, why did you decide to go into education?
Well, I didn't. This is a second career for me. My first degree is in public relations and psychology. And I decided to go into secondary ed because I was in a situation that I thought that people were coming to college ill-prepared for being able to think on their own. And so I just decided I was given a gift to be able to be a teacher, and it's one I take really seriously because I think it's really important that people remember that as a teacher, every day I have kids come into my classroom that there is an adult that would stand in front of a train for them. Parents give and have given teachers, here, I'm trusting you with the thing I would die for, the person I would die for. I'm letting you have influence. And that is something that I take really seriously in all the jobs that I have had, because I think it is a gift that very few professionals get. And so going back to the beginning question of this podcast, which is why are teachers leaving? One, personal reasons. They move. We're a much more mobile society than we've ever been before. I just had a son move to Fort Collins because he's remote and he's always wanted to live in the mountains. Okay, he has that flexibility now. So one, we have a lot more mobility as a society. That's part of it. Number two, there is a pay differential when you are leaving college of what a teacher will make and what one of their colleagues will make. Come on. In Illinois, we just had to pass legislation that a teacher had to make $40,000 a year. Well, that's just part of it. The other reason why people are leaving the profession is because there's a narrative around teaching that it's not a great profession. But I will tell you this, there are hard days. There is no doubt about it. I am not a Pollyanna when it comes to that. And the last 2.5 years have been really tough. But I don't know too many people that work in corporate America that right now, today, in July, have a kid saying, I can't wait to see Mrs. So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so. They are my favorite person other than you, Mom. My favorite person. And drawing pictures. And when that first day of school comes around, the eyes are bright, a little bit of scaredness. We get it. But you tell me somebody that gets to go to work every day and have colleagues that are there because they want to make a difference, they had a teacher that influenced them, or they love school. There's a common bond there. And I think the other reason why people are leaving the profession is because the narrative out there is that it's a horrible profession. And I will tell you, as I start my last year in education, there's not a day I go to work, not a day, not even a day in the pandemic that I went to work and I did not feel grateful for being able to call myself a teacher.
Now, there might be people that were teachers that didn't quite feel the same way,
That's
right?
That's right. But you know what? Thank you for leaving. Thank you for getting out of the profession. There's no shame in leaving education. There's no shame of leaving an insurance company. There's no shame if you change corporate jobs. Nobody puts it on the front page of the paper that you should be bashed because you got to a point in your own personal life to say, you know what? I'm not feeling it anymore. I'm going to go take my skills, which a teacher has public speaking skills, organizational skills, research skills. They have the skills to be able to collaborate with people. They're typically very polite people. They can take those into another industry. I don't show any shade on those people. I thank them for leaving instead of staying and becoming yucky. I don't need those people in my life.
Right.
But we have to realize people change jobs all the time. So what? So what? Why is it that educators should be shamed and saying, you know what, I made this decision when I was 19 years old. I am now 35. I have 2 children of my own, and my husband or my wife just got a new job, and I think I'm going to stay home with my kids. Or I think that I want to sell Pampered Chef for a while. Or I want to go work and be a speaker at an insurance company. I keep bringing that up because we have 2 huge insurance companies here in town that, by the way, are filled with teachers because they're skilled individuals. And so, to me, yes, there are people leaving the profession, but there are people joining us too.
All right, and we're getting towards the end of this thing.
Okay.
I've got to ask one more question,
Sure.
though, because it's a bit of a curveball
Sure.
here. You talked about, the lowering numbers of teachers, et cetera, and the different reasons behind that. One thing I think that we didn't even mention might be this idea that it might be a dangerous profession because of this
Safety.
rise in, school shootings. It's really an incredible thing to witness. It just seems like every week some mass shooting of some sort's going on, and schools aren't out of the picture for all that.
Yeah.
What do you think about that situation, if you don't mind being so bold as to give your opinion on maybe what do you think should be done?
Well, actually, thank you for bringing this up.
Sure.
Really, I think that this is a really important topic for us to discuss. Do I think it's a contributing factor? Absolutely. I absolutely do. I think that we are in right now as a society in a very scary spot because schools, 4th of July parades, malls, tell me where I can go and I can guarantee safety. So, in saying that, what can we do? We've done a lot in education already. Have we done everything that could be? Well, if somebody has the answer, I hope they call me. Because here's what I know. Our doors are locked all the time. That's not how it used to be. It used to be that doors were open all the time. We have our visitors and our volunteers check in and we track them. We have we really do try and mitigate what we can do to make our campuses all safe. And I'm talking across the board as educators. But we could use some help with that. And probably that means a much bigger overhaul for our society. But I do think it is a contributing factor. And I think it's one of the reasons, to be honest with you, Paul, why people like remote working at home. They can control their environment.
There's one safe place, right?
Well,
home.
Hopefully. We know that's not always the case. And we do know that schools are safer for some of our students than their own home.
Oh, that's so true. That's so true. And then that just points to the importance of, hey, I think there should be a cultural push for take back the family and make sure you just have great family values or raising kids well. Like, let's make that cool.
Well, and you know what? As the rest of us, as we're saying, hey, you need to be doing this, we need to make sure that in our everyday, I will talk to business people a lot and they'll say, Diane, what about this? And I said, hey, listen, if you want to help me out, make sure that you're paying your staff to go to parent-teacher conference days. Don't make them take a half a day. If you really value education, prove it in your business policies. Make sure that schools in this area start the week of August 15th. Hey, let your employees that are parents say to them, the first day of school, our gift to you as a company is you can come in an hour late so you can get your kid on the bus the first day of school. It is those little things that we can do to support each other as a society to help that mom pay a living wage, make sure that we have affordable housing. Listen when the mom is complaining because something bad's going on at school or the dad is saying that, I don't know how to handle this. Say, why don't you take an extra 5 minutes on your break, because teachers have that prep period I was talking about. We're very structured. I'll tell you, mine was at 11:01, 11:02, 11:02. Well, if one of my parents didn't have at 11:02 an opening to call me, communication could become very difficult. So as a business owner, or as a society, if we can see those things, let's help each other out with that.
And your psychology background is really becoming more and more apparent as this conversation goes on. It's a beautiful thing. I love the field of psychology. I've read a good few books on psychology. It's very, very interesting. And surely from the school, violence, school shootings, on that topic, your psychology, you have to look at it from a psychological standpoint a little bit. This is often young, white males who kind of fit a certain demographic of being reclusive, being isolated, and it's one heck of a complex problem. But do you think that issue, so two things, when it comes to the school shootings and the violence and the precautions we should take, some people on the further right end of the spectrum will think that we should arm teachers. Do you think that's a good or a bad idea? And then what about, we'll start with that before I ask you two questions in one.
Well, I can just say this. If you want to not have teachers, you can make that a mandatory thing. I can hardly drive among the yellow lines. I don't want to have a gun in my classroom. That is not why I went. One of my 3 reasons was not to be armed. And I would say this. I know that's a quick fix. I'll give a teacher a gun. That to me is just a Band-Aid. We really need to start saying as a society, what are we doing here? And what can each of us, I always believe in starting with myself. I don't really have the right to tell other people what to do with their life or how to think. Not my business. But what can I do in my life to make my sphere of influence positive? And I've been able to do that. I can guarantee you this. When I was first year teaching in 1992 and I had that kid in my class, I would have called you a crazy man if you would have told me that 30 odd years later, I would still be in communication with that kid and that he would still call me every single year on my birthday. I would have told you that no. So we can't predict, what's going to make a difference. But I do know this. I would not be in favor of that. And I think that would be really, I would not be in favor of arming teachers because it's one more thing that a teacher would have to, that to me is just a Band-Aid. Let's get to the real problem, which is why do people feel disenfranchised in society? And whose responsibility is that? Well, it's all of ours.
I agree with you there as far as what to focus on.
Yeah.
It's a big problem, cultural, societal, psychological, sociological, parental, familial.
But we can do it. I am convinced
You're right,
of this.
we can. I agree with you.
We absolutely can do it.
Absolutely. All right. Well, hey, we covered a lot of ground
we
there.
We did.
I want to ask, is there anything that you'd like to say before we wrap this thing up? Because, of course, you have a big voice, People listen to you. People care about what you have to say. Is there anything you'd like to put out there?
Yeah, I think that we're getting ready to start school in Central Illinois. A few things. Number one, if you have a problem, don't put it on social media. That does not help us at all. Call us, though, and we'd be happy to talk to you. 2, people are surprised that we listen. We really do. Public schools belong to the community of which they live in. And so if you have something you want us to know, please let us know. We're humans. There are times that people make mistakes, but we'll tell you when we do, and we'll say we're sorry. And I think the most important thing as we end today, Paul, is to remind people that public schools are the last place that everybody is welcome. You can go and everybody is welcome in our schools. We will take every socioeconomic status. We will take every gender. We will take every race. We take wherever you are in the learning spectrum, we welcome you into our schools. That is what America is all about to me, is that there is a place that you can get all different kinds of people together towards the common goal of expanding opportunities for people, and you can do it in a way that everybody has a spot. I love that. I really do.
Well said. And to everyone watching and listening to this episode of the Paul Garcia Show, thank you so much for doing so. Be sure to like, comment, and share this video. Like, comment on, and share this video, I should say. And Dr. Diane Wolf, thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome.
It's really, really been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. That's a wrap.